Okay, welcome. We're live. A very special one, at least for our channel, a very special one because he's one of the people that is the main inspiration of what we do, and for a big part as well, how we do it. AronRa. Aron, welcome.
How you do, sir? How you do, sir?
I'm doing fine. Please don't call me sir. Just call me Peter.
Yes, sir.
I'm far from being a sir.
Okay. All right. Well, how are all things going?
Reasonably fine. We should have had Pastor Locke in on this, had he not cancelled at the last moment, which is a shame, but I'll hope that we can reschedule at some point, because I think it would be it would make for a good talk. Maybe even a different topic that I suggested at first. I thought of a better one later, but we'll see where.
What topic did you want to go on?
Well, I had chosen creation evolution.
Okay, well, that's a good one for me.
Yes, but since you're also running for office, and he's a Trump fan.
Okay, and so you just like to see a dumpster fire.
and yeah, but also he's also against abortion. He's also against pretty much everything that we're in favor of. So maybe that would have been a better topic.
Yeah. Wow. We were talking in Twitter earlier, and I saw, or I got in contact with somebody I pulled up, or I shared a video explaining abiogenesis to middle schoolers, and there was a couple of, I would call them troll boys on Twitter that were, just saying stupid things to try to call me out and denying. One guy said a bunch of crazy stuff like, I give this explanation of abiogenesis, which he wants me to explain in Twitter in my own words. So you want me to explain abiogenesis in 140 characters? That's literally what you want me to do. But fortunately I had this video prepared, so I give him the link for that. And then he freaks out because now I've got a comprehensive explanation of what abiogenesis is for a middle school audience. And so he then says that that scientists have no clue how life emerged. And I'm like, okay, I just gave you a 10-minute video listing a whole bunch of clues in which you say there is no clue. Shall we go back over the video so that we can point out all the clues I've just given you? And then somebody pulls up a scientist who they say, that the scientific evidence convinced this person of Christianity, and the same guy that's criticizing me previously is going on about how no scientist has any idea, no idea at all how life forms. So they get this scientist to come in here, and the first thing he does is compliment me on my video, and then he and I go over points that that I got accurate or that he missed or whatever. So basically, he's backing up that what I said is correct, and this other person is trying to tell me that there are alternative hypotheses to abiogenesis that are being explored, which is complete bollocks. It challenged the guy. Okay, tell me what these alternative hypotheses are. You can't, because you just pulled it up out of your ass. You just made that up. That's a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the beautiful thing was, this person cites this guy or tags him or brings him into the argument, and the reason she did was the excuse that, he's a scientist who was once an atheist, and then the scientific evidence convinced him of Christianity. And then as soon as we point that out to him, the first thing he says is, no, it didn't. Or he says, well, yes, it did, except not really. So what does not really mean? So there's actually no evidence that implied that. And he was clear about that. So he basically, it's the God of the gaps thing. He doesn't understand how some aspect of the universe came to be, and rather than looking for a natural answer, he just assumes magic, which means he assumes the Bible and so forth, which is a whole bunch of non sequiturs that I don't understand. There's a combination of logical fallacies there, but he's going to be on a podcast with me this Thursday, and I'm very much looking forward to finding out what his reasoning is.
Mm-hmm.
Though I think I can predict that. I don't want to be too biased about it. I'm just going to let him talk as much as he can.
Yeah, can you send me a link to that so I can tweet that as well, because the guy you're talking about was recently a guest on our channel. I think we're talking about SideGuard. Is that correct?
Yeah, I at least know the first name. I didn't pay attention to the second one. And I don't know who the guest was that was supposed to be on tonight either. But I mean, I saw he was getting a lot of negative comments on Twitter. And usually I wait until I have a personal experience with somebody or have some experience with the things that he said before I would, come down on him so harshly. Yeah. So I was going to be, completely open with whatever until he started shooting his mouth off, I guess.
Yeah,
it was a little discouraging to see people piling on the hate that they were before this had even gone on. But I guess other people had a history with him, and I don't know anything at all about him. So what can I say?
Well, I tried to control that a little bit because I don't think it's productive to.
Yeah, I don't either.
To do that.
I'm just so not about hate, and don't we already have enough?
Yeah.
People hate so quickly. I mean, anytime somebody disagrees with me, I mean, it happened on Twitter again just minutes ago. Anytime somebody disagrees with me on the slightest thing, they right away call me a liar. Now, I was always raised that you do not ever accuse someone of lying unless you have the proof that what they said is wrong and that they knew it was wrong when they said it. You have to have both things before you.
Yeah, there has to be intent.
That you
the
have
intent has to be
an
there.
honorable person would not make that accusation without both of those things. But never, ever can they even show that the thing that I said was wrong in the first place, much less that I knew it was wrong. So it's always a false accusation. I just wish people had a little bit more honor, a little bit more integrity in the kind of accusations that they make. Why do they jump to so much hate, so much vitriol right away? Always because they don't understand what the hell they're talking about.
Well, I said it in the beginning. You were one of the people that inspired me to do what I'm doing now on Twitter and on YouTube. You, Matt, and Seth. Matt can be a little bit more animated than the rest, I guess. But I always appreciated how much time you took and how much respect you had for someone you were talking to. There's.
I want to say something about that. I mean, if there's a chance that you really believe what you do for honest reasons, then I have every reason to extend as much patience as necessary to help you out of that. And a lot of people will think that atheists just hate believers, which of course is not the case. We don't hate people who have cancer. You hate the cancer and you cure that, and then the person is fine, right? You don't hate the person for being sick or for being addicted. And it's the same thing, because religion, I don't consider religion to be like a disease. I think it's an addiction. That's more likely what it is. I mean, when people are under the influence of an addictive drug, they very often think that they're happier than people who don't have that. And then, of course, they are much improved in many aspects of their lives once they walk away from that delusion. So that's the way I view that. So, I mean, I'll give you all the patience that I can, as long as I perceive you to be sincere. But once you start revealing that you don't care what the truth is and you're just going to start lying about me, then we're done.
Well, I think there really is a valid reason for them believing that we do hate them. And a lot of it comes from the Bible itself.
Why would somebody who believes impossible nonsense for no good reason believe that we hate them for that?
Because they're taught to believe that we hate them. At least within fundamentalist Christianity.
So they've been raised in nothing but lies.
Charis, I think you have to fill them in a little bit on your background, because I don't think Aron knows.
I was raised I had a very fundamentalist upbringing. I wasn't from the happy-go-lucky type of Christians that many of us see around. They're all smiles, everything like that. The type of Christianity that I grew up in was very strictly by the Bible. Women, if they were Muslim, the women would all be in burqas. As it was that some of them had to wear hats in church because covering of the head of the woman symbolizes the authority over her that her husband has. The women had a certain, code of dress, for modesty. That's fairly common, but the real difference was how separatism. Are you familiar with separatism? Basically, if you join hands with people who you believe follow a blasphemous doctrine, then you're basically joining hands with the devil. And there are teachings of what non-believers think, what non-believers feel. The godless, they're evil. They have evil in their heart. They follow their father, who is the father of lies, the god of this world, the father of evil. And if you're of the world, then Satan is already on your side because he already has your soul. But if you're one of the flock, then those who are of the world, atheists, hate those who are of Christ. We are diametrically opposed.
As being the people who, buy into the Matrix thing, where they're so determined to have this false reality where they have magic powers that they've removed themselves from the real reality, and so they can now imagine that they have these powerful connections and that they exist beyond this world and all of these other things that they want to pretend.
In this particular case, I mean, some of the more charismatic denominations, that might be part of it, but in the case of those that I was with, rather than separating yourself because of powers, it was separating yourself for purity, for distancing yourself from sin and from those who promoted sin, like atheists. So with a lot of them, it's not that they necessarily want to believe that atheists hate them. Some of them, I'm sure, do, but that many of them have been taught that atheists hate them.
Yeah, well, the one that gets
hate
me
everything.
is the comment that they very often make that, why do atheists invest so much time trying to disprove a God they don't believe in? Well, why would you correct any lie that you know to be detrimental and that you can show false? I mean, if you have a value of and respect for truth, I mean, then shouldn't that be a motivation in and of itself, right? I mean, if we know that
the biggest
everything
irony
that is asserted about God is in one sense or other a lie, and I mean, I can actually say that these are lies. When somebody says, when they start telling you just matter-of-factly the way that God is and what God wants and who he hates and what he will do and everything, and they start giving you details about how things are in heaven and what's going to happen after you die, and they're just stating this out as if there was some way you could call them on it and they'd be able to pull up the data to back it up to prove that what they're saying is correct. When they know that's not the case, they're just making it up, right? So when you assert facts or claim facts that are not facts, that's a lie. You're stating something is a fact when it is not a fact. And when you're pretending to have knowledge you don't really have, when you're not honest enough to say, well, I believe, but you're stating it as if you know, and again, you've got no data to show that you actually know any of this, that too is a lie. And that is what the entirety of religion is dependent on. Every religion, not just Christianity, all of them, faith itself, asserting baseless speculation as though it were fact and pretending to know things you don't know anything about. That's my problem with religion, because it's wholly and inherently dishonest, back to front.
One of the biggest ironies is that one of the biggest statements within Christianity is the truth shall set you free, but they buck against it at every turn. Like, no, keep the truth away. I want to stay bound to Christ. I don't want to be set free.
For them, truth is whatever unsubstantiated assertion they've just made up. That's not truth. The truth is what the facts are. The truth is a statement about reality that can be shown to be true. You can't call it truth if you can't show that the thing that you just said is true. If you can't verify the accuracy of your claims to any degree at all, by any means whatsoever, then you can't pretend to know it either. You certainly can't call it truth unless you can verify it. Now, somebody wants to call me out or challenge me on my perspective, on my worldview, as they would put it. I can show the data. You can tell me all about what you merely believe for no good reason, but I can show you what I know and what we can prove to be correct. And
one problem that I often encounter
religion does not have that.
A problem I often encounter with people who are in a faith-based religion is that they have a completely different idea of what qualifies as evidence. I mean, we'll talk about data all day, but they're over here talking about visions, and I ask them how, a perfectly healthy mind can experience a hallucination. there's stress, there's high emotions, there's being really tired, hungry, and everything all at once. Your mind is healthy, but you can still experience something that may not actually be real. How do you, tell the difference between that and a supernatural vision, or a vision from a supernatural source? They really don't have an answer for that. I don't think they like to think that, oh my gosh, I could be hallucinating. Because in their worldview, many of them, if you have any sort of psychological issue, it's because there's demons involved. It's because,
Well, they have a very loose. They have a very different lexicon, obviously, than I do. I mean, I define all my terms, and I make sure that the way that I'm using words are the mainstream application. In every opportunity possible. I mean, if dictionaries get something wrong, if they're talking about if they're misrepresenting faith, or if they're misrepresenting science, then I'll go to the respective source to get the correct definition. But I try to be as
definitions exist for a reason.
Yeah, so that we can make sure that when I'm using a word, that it doesn't end up like the Humpty Dumpty and the Alice in Wonderland thing. Where I don't know if anybody's ever even read that. But there's this beautiful conversation where Humpty Dumpty just has a different definition for every word he uses, and of course Alice is completely confused. I get that whenever I'm talking to theists, because the words that they use, they have a completely different definition, one that doesn't make any sense, where truth is whatever they want to believe without any justification at all, and I'm a liar for saying anything contrary to that, even if I can prove that it's true. So that's hugely confusing,
because your words are coming from the father of lies to them.
And what the hell is a lie?
Quite literally.
How do you even discern what is the truth and what is a lie? They don't have a way to do that. I do.
For many of them, the Bible is their quote unquote objective truth,
which is entirely subjective. 30,000 different
yes.
interpretations. And this is just for which of however many different denominations, for however many different completely distinct religions to different pantheons.
I understand that.
This is important. None of them can verify that anything they believe is any more accurate than anything else. There is not one fact that any group of believers or individuals could verify is more correct about their perception of God than any other. There's not one thing that they can verify or falsify. So there is literally absolutely nothing any believer can honestly say they actually know. If there's no way to verify that it's correct, and there's no way to falsify it if it's not correct, you're done. You're making it up. So there is no way to distinguish religious beliefs from the illusion of delusions. There just isn't. There's nothing there. We literally don't have anything to talk about.
Yeah. When people come to you talking about personal experience, and I say this because I saw you talking to someone I know who, for all I know, says that's what made her the Christian she is today. She had a personal experience with God, and she also had a personal experience with Satan. How do you handle that if people tell you that?
I was a neo-pagan occultist once upon a time in my teen years, and I knew many other alternative spiritualists of one sense or another. I've had personal experiences that are far more impressive to my memory than any Christian has ever told me. I mean, I've seen things and experienced things that blow their doors. And it was a very painful thing for me to realize one point at a moment of adult reflection that none of that could have really happened. I remember it. I remember it still. But it was a painful thing to realize that none of it was possible, and that in some way that had to be an illusion, and that I did that to myself. And I know people that, I mean, like, here's a good example. There's somebody who lives, not 2 miles from my house. I've known him for 20 some odd years, 30 years now. And he's a pagan. He worships, his patron deity is Bast, the Egyptian cat goddess. And the reason that he worships her is because she personally appeared in his house and bade him to become her disciple. Visibly, audibly, tangibly, she appeared in his house and spoke to him in front of him so he could see her, he could hear her, and he could feel her. So there's a visible, tangible, cat-headed goddess that appears in this man's house. And for decades after that event, he is a devotee of Bast. Now, I've heard George Harrison of the Beatles talk about how he has a personal relationship with Krishna. You hear Christians all the time saying that, you know, Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship with their imaginary friend. But they're not the only ones with a personal God. The Bhakti Hindu definitely have a personal God. And George Harrison says that he had his relationship with his personal God was such that Krishna would visibly appear and audibly appear, where you can actually see him and hear him talking and laughing with you like a real person really in the room. Now, this is a deeper relationship, a more realistic relationship than Christians ever talk about. And his experience wasn't even as good as Bast can do. So the pagan god is even better than Krishna, and Krishna is better than Jesus. So how do people explain all these? So, well, you're just going to have to dismiss it all as being the lies of the devil, aren't you? Because every truth against your ridiculous belief has to be dismissed as a lie. You can't look at it logically. The only thing you can do as in defense of your faith is that anything that challenges your ridiculous presuppositions must be dismissed as a challenge against your faith, so that it becomes a backfire effect. So that instead of prompting you to think logically, like all of these challenges should realistically do, it causes you to dig in and be firmer in your faith, which is, it's just a conditioning. It's a mental conditioning that is where the belief system has a defense mechanism that's automated.
You prove the strength of your faith against the fiery arrows of the enemy is basically what you're doing. I'm sure you've heard that one. The enemy presents himself as an angel of light.
I've had people tell me that anytime I say anything that makes sense to them, that it is only the devil speaking through me. And there's no way to reason with these people, because they don't want to be reasoned with, because religion doesn't want to be reasoned with. And it's not that it's not that their religious belief has a conscious mind. But if you look at the way that the belief system is set up, it does act as though it's almost like a virus infection, the way the religion defends itself in order to perpetuate this belief system.
Fear of hell is very real. Somebody was asking what type of beer you have, by the way.
Oh, this is a local Texas brand. This is
Revolver,
Blood and Honey.
I just threw that out there.
That
crap.
There's someone who asked, had his picture taken with you and Yasmin Mohammed a couple of weeks ago. Spoke at some kind of meeting or convention.
If it was Yasmin Mohammed,
I think in Oklahoma.
More than a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember where it was. Ohio, I think.
Ohio, Ohio or Oklahoma.
If it's Yasmin Mohammed, if I haven't confused people in my mind, I think they're talking about a conference in Ohio, where Yasmin, I'm sorry to say, was the opening act, but her presentation was vastly better than mine. It was emotive and compelling, and she gave a very good presentation. As a matter of fact, she did so well that people who are familiar with my work were already giving me the raised eyebrow when it was time for me to speak. And one of them said, as I was walking up to the front, "You've got to follow that."
Good luck.
Yeah, well, she was good.
We'll link her to this, because we spoke to her last week. So she'll be glad to hear this.
Wasn't she handing around her hijab and niqab?
Yep. Yeah, it was a very, very powerful presentation. Now, I would have probably felt a little bit more comfortable following her if it were a different subject matter, but I was talking about cladistics at that point.
Did you put it on?
I'm going to lose the audience. I mean, before I even started, I knew I was going to lose that audience.
Did you put on her niqab?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you put on the hijab?
No,
and niqab?
I didn't put any of that stuff on.
So there's another thing I wanted to ask.
Would have kept your hair pretty.
You're running for Senate. Has that started? Have you started your campaign?
Well, yeah,
yet?
there's a bit of frustration there, because American politics is so embarrassingly corrupt that in order to do anything, you have to have a whole bunch of money. And my opponents, the Republican opponents, which by the way, there are two now, the Republicans have decided that the guy that I was originally running against was so batshit crazy that they had to get somebody else to get him out. Because if there's a realistic chance that I could win because that guy is so nuts, then they need to replace that guy, which was part of my plan in the first place, really, was I wanted to get rid of the extreme, the really radically extreme guy who describes himself as a Tea Party believer and all of that, and full on creationist and everything. He's so unbelievably right wing. It's not possible to go further right than him.
And
so
see, that was normal to me. So
the Republican Party actually had to find somebody more moderate than him to try to get him out. So, but the problem is that both of those candidates, both of the Republican candidates I've heard raised over $500,000 for their campaigns, both of them. And how do you raise $500,000 to compete with somebody for a job that is technically a part-time job that only pays $21,000 a year? Do you see where that's absurd?
Yeah.
For all the things, and I want to do this. I'm seriously wanting to run. I'm just trying to figure out how to do this. I don't want to take people's money when there are so many valuable things that they could be contributing to, like Puerto Rico, for example. There's so many good things that people should be investing their money in. For me to ask for $500,000 for this job, I don't know. I just have when your entire living is made on Patreon donations, as it is, and by the way, this is how I support myself. Patreon.com/AronRa, and I need all the support I can get.
I've put all the links in the description, Aron.
Thank you very much.
That one's on top.
I'm delighted that I'm able to do this full time and that I'm able to actually accomplish some things. But when it gets into politics, the amount of money is stupid, and the fact that it's required is stupid. Like in the United Kingdom, for example, they have a legal limit that you can't spend more than £30,000 on your campaign. That's what you're limited to, right? £30,000. But in the United States, the Democratic Party told me that I needed $30,000 to begin. That's the base minimum, and that's already more than what I would earn in a year. Do you see what's wrong with our political system?
But do you have any backup getting money together to at least be able to run?
I've been trying to get alternative means of publicity through, just from other sources that I don't want to get into right now because I don't want to, cause any complications in that publicity. But I haven't been getting support from a lot of the people that I thought I would be getting support from because they're apparently only interested in the national candidates, not anyone running for state offices, which is frustrating. So, the publicity that's necessary is extreme and it's expensive, and it's just, I need thousands and thousands of dollars more than I have. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I don't mean that I'm close. Huh?
Have you heard of Justice Democrats?
I have, and I've notified them several times, and there has not been one, not Our Revolution, not Justice Democrats, not there's a couple of others that I can't remember the names of right now, but I've contacted all these different groups, and some of them even said they were going to interview me at some point, like the Young Turks and so forth. And I actually saw conversations where they were picking out which of them was going to interview me, but so far, no invitations for any interview has been forthcoming. So I don't know. If Democrats want to make some waves, if they want to get some, it wouldn't be that difficult to just, hey, get me on your show once and let's talk for 10 minutes. What would it cost you?
Try Kyle Kulinski at Secular Talk.
Did.
Oh.
Yep. Several times. No reply. I've gotten no reply from any of them. It's like they don't even receive the messages. The Young Turks is the only one that acknowledged ever having heard of or from me. And I still didn't get an invitation to be interviewed.
Maybe they somehow didn't receive the message.
Well, the Young Turks were at least talking about how they should interview me and which of them was going to do it, but then it never happened, and I don't know why. There's no way to follow up on that. Not that I know of anyway. So it's been, with everything else that I have to do, it's admittedly, it's a lot on me. I mean, what do I know about politics? What do I know about running a campaign and all of the effort that has to go into that? I don't have a staff of people. I mean, I know other candidates, they actually have full-time employees because they raise stupid amounts of money so that they can give people full-time salaries. I don't have that. So I don't have, like, you know, the various different people who are actually doing this as their full-time job to do the publicity, you know, other campaign. I mean, obviously, when you've raised $500,000, you have a number of temp people that are just doing this full-time. But that's not my situation.
If you,
I'm sure some of our listeners,
it's getting really frustrating that I want to do this for real, but the amount of money that is required is ridiculous, and how you even ask for people for this amount of money is ridiculous, and it's the American political system is very frustrating, especially for somebody that is not, or had never, you know, intended to be I was never into politics to the point that I wanted to actually participate in it until I ran this time, and it's a little discouraging seeing how it actually works, because a lot of
running as an
candidates,
atheist in Texas.
Yeah, and a lot of candidates, once they're elected, they don't actually do anything except try to raise money for that next election. So it's just a complete cycle. So this is why everything is so corrupt. I mean, look at the way that all of our senators operate. They operate by, you know, getting huge amounts of money from special interest groups and then voting the way that those special interest groups tell them to vote. I mean, this isn't, if you're looking into the, you know, what's happening politically at all, you're seeing this happen. So it's nothing but corruption. Now, I would like to stop that. I'm not the dollar-minded people that so many of these other people are. I'm not that kind of corrupt. It's just, in order, you have to be, in order to get there, you have to be that concerned with getting people's money from them just to get in that position where you could start to try to reverse that. And then the next thing you've got to be concerned about is raising more money for the next campaign. It's,
yeah.
We have someone in the chat right now who I think threw in something that could be helpful.
Before we do that, if anybody that wants to donate to my campaign, if I'm going to do anything at all, I do need a whole bunch of money, and that's going to be at, the best way to do that is I have a link at AronRa.org, not .com, .org, AronRa.com. Thank you.
Do you have a GoFundMe?
Okay. Someone in the chat says, you have a huge following on YouTube, so at least people would notice you if you made a video just on this. And
yeah, I was thinking
he
about
also
that
said
today. I tried to schedule a talk in some of the cities in my district, and when we called up and invite up to, you know, say we want to come and speak, like, you know, on whatever days are available this month or what have you. And instead of that, they scheduled my opponent and then invited me to also attend. It's not what we asked for at all. But, you know, this is the way things work. You have to have support of the party, and if you're not the mainstream character, then you're not going to have the support of the party. So it does seem that everything that I do is going to have to be outside the box. And my following, however big people might think that it is, almost nobody in my district is part of that following. It's a very rural, almost entirely Republican district. So there's going to need to be publicity well outside of my own channel breadth in order to get any attention. I'm going to need money for advertising, and that sort of thing. I mean, I can't even just schedule to show up for the meet and greet. And even if you do this typical thing about the meet and greet and everything, what you usually meet in those groups of people is like 16 individual activists. You know, great, but that's not going to get it when you know you have a district like what we're talking about. And it's a huge district. There's 9 counties, and it's enormous. It's a very big area.
Well, he also volunteered. He said he could make phone calls. He could help wherever help was needed for your campaign. So I'll get you in touch with him after this.
Organizational suggestions as well, because as I said, I mean, I had no idea how, you know, corrupt and awkward this political system was when I jumped into it. You know, and it's a little disappointing to see that it is that way. But people who are better versed in that are certainly welcome to help guide me through it.
Well, I can offer one thing. I'm a little bit good with graphics, so if you should need some kind of a campaign trailer or something, I would.
Oh yeah, we'll
do whatever I can.
Because I do need that. I've needed that for months and just haven't done it. it's awkward trying to do everything else at the same time. And I know people don't really appreciate how awkward my schedule is, but I'll just leave that for the
Well,
moment.
if there's one thing I could say is that I've never met anyone who puts out that amount of content in that short a time as you do, and that's something that I hugely admire you for, because
Well, thank
that's
you very
something
much.
that I could never do.
Being somebody who, as I said, when I live on patron donations, I want to be worth the money. And so what I have been doing, and you know, for anybody that wants to donate to my Patreon, you know, please do. I mean, one of the things that I do is I do podcasts, 2 of them. I've been doing a progressive podcast where I understand that there's an awful lot of negativity, there's an awful lot of hate, and I'm really tired of people to just complain, and that's all you can do. So I want to talk to people who are not only suggesting a solution instead, but that are actually doing something to make things better. So I've been, for the last 3 years now, at least once a month, I've been interviewing people, inventors, politicians, activists, people in various capacities who are actually heading up some program, you know, to whether it's getting water to Rwanda or designing a new energy system or whatever it is, that you know, something that's actually being implemented, and it's been rewarding to talk to these people. I missed the headbutting that I used to get, so I'm also doing another series where I talk to people that hold what I consider to be irrational beliefs, and I try to reason with them, and I'm having a bit of fun with that. I don't know yet how my audience is responding, that they're wondering why I'm talking to so many crazy people. Well, they have irrational beliefs. That's but you know, you have to engage these people at some degree in order for people to see how irrational that is. You need that person to come on and explain how irrational their belief is.
I can't laugh too hard. I've held many of these irrational beliefs myself, so I know what it's like on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and then the other ones I do, I mean, I do a lot of presentations at least once a month. I'm speaking at a conference or convention or rally or something like that. And I'm doing 2 of them this month, for example. I'll be in Raleigh, North Carolina on Monday, and then a week or 2 after that, I'm going to be in Fresno. And those things go up on my channel as well. And then I do other, you know, I do educational series whenever I can, and I do the right now I'm working on a series for the systematic classification of life, because I also am director of the Phylogeny Explorer project. We're working on a web base that is 3 years in the making and has so far invested, I don't know, the last report that I had was that we were invested over 20,000 British pounds, and that was a year ago. So no telling how much money has been invested into this organization so far. But we've been divining this huge database that is a navigable, or will be a navigable, online encyclopedia for the entire phylogenetic tree of life. And recently we got the creators of the paleos.com website, which does paleontology, exploring different geologic periods. They're working with us on this. And I'm looking for paleo artists, all kinds of artistic submissions and detail information, because we are making it's a navigable encyclopedia. So you can walk through the tree of life. And when we built the database, it's quite robust already. We have, I think we're somewhere between 20 and 30,000 different species. And we're including every extinct species known to man. So, I mean, this is going to be a much more voluminous phylogenetic tree than anybody has ever done. This is the one. There's a lot of cladograms that you can get on the web that are very pretty to look at, but don't actually give you any educational information. They don't show the extinct species, and they don't give you the value of the clades, which is the purpose behind ours. We're explaining, what does it mean to be a deuterostome? What does it mean to be a chordate? Why are things classified the way they are? And the database is hugely robust, but not well illustrated yet. So we want the second wave of people to come in and start putting in the pictures and, you know, make it a little bit prettier. The big thing for us, of course, was that we have something that you can actually navigate through and use. And I'm doing a video series right now called The Systematic Classification of Life, where I show some of these in the human evolutionary line, you know, in our direct lineage. And people might be interested in those. And I'm getting a lot of positive responses on that it's very educational, and it's something, it's the most powerful, the most compelling evidence for evolution there ever was. Yet, strangely, it's a topic virtually nobody knows anything about. And so I'm trying to change that.
I recently spoke with P.C. and I touched on this yours, and yeah, he also told me that a lot of people will benefit from it, not only the general public but also people in the field. So
yes, that's the big thing. We want to bring in scientists, and I've been inviting a number of scientists to just dabble in it. What we want to do ultimately is turn it over to, say, a university or what have you, and have them take it over as its own living entity, so that the scientific community controls it entirely, so that they do the maintenance, they do the corrections and so forth. This is just something that we're putting together to initiate for them, which then would be my contribution to science. And strangely, this has been for, I want to say, about 30 years. This has been my goal. That this has been the thing that I've wanted to dedicate to science.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty clear. If people who have been following you on YouTube pretty much know that's something that you always said you wanted to put out there.
And I'm delighted that although I don't have a website yet that I can show people, that's been promised, that we should have a landing page within this month. At some point in October, there will be a website that we can then share with people. I can't share it broadly, though, because I can't crash the server. So we need a different server capacity. At least I'll have something that I can just send to the web and share with people, that they don't have to have a login to look at. But I'm not going to be able to make a huge landing with it until we have a different server capacity, because I understand that the weight of not just the data, but the volume of people going to it is a concern. That some smaller universities that I've talked to said that they wouldn't be able to host it, that it would have to be a bigger thing. So there's a couple of organizations that might be able to host it, and I'm trying to reach out to them to share it with them. But until I have a link that I can just send a private link to, here, take a look, it's going to be difficult even to petition those people to take over and host the server space for it. And that's what happened with Paleos.com. Paleos was a brilliant website that was being produced by a handful of autodidacts, but the paleontological community worldwide attached themselves to it because it was so brilliantly done. The website was so comprehensive and so voluminous that it became a resource for paleontologists, so that the paleontological community was actually using this website as an educational resource. And the problem was that nobody was providing funding for it, so Paleos went through a period where they couldn't keep their own data up online anymore. Now, renewed interest, hopefully having in some part due to me for advertising them, I would like to think, they've put up a lot more of their pages. They're coming back up, and they want to work with us, and I want to work with them, because I want to get hosting for both of our websites.
Mm-hmm. Someone in the chat asked, wouldn't the Richard Dawkins Foundation be interested in contributing to this?
Thus far, I haven't gotten a reply. I know that they've looked at it, but I haven't gotten any feedback. So I don't even know if they have any reservations or contentions or questions. They haven't shared them. So I don't know what to say about that. As I said, once we have a landing page constructed, which is a big deal, really, and that's what's being developed right now. We have a database engineer in Greece who did the design of the database, and this was the second database. The first one that was built by a guy in London, it looked very nice and everything, but it collapsed quickly when we started putting the data in. It was too much data for that database, and it collapsed, and so we had to redesign the whole thing from scratch. So remarkably, this has been, you would think, I mean, it would be a relatively simple thing to design, but no, this has taken years, and they're still working on it. But now that the database is functional and it's holding up, and it looks like it's going to be indelible, it's actually going to work this time. Now we just need the web page, the landing page that has all of the pretty features on it. And that is being constructed as we speak, and should be available to a few people that we'll share the link to within, as I said, some point in October.
Okay. Another one asked a question. The university at Buffalo. They
Again,
have
I can't. There's not a lot I can do until I have a landing page to show, because all I can do right now is I can give a link for people to log in if they want to create a login and approve their login, so that they can navigate through the back end. And so far, you can see exactly what the back end looks like, because that's what shows up in my videos. But that's all there is. So there's a lot of people won't even understand really what they're looking at. So I need a landing page. And I need, as I said, enhancements of encyclopedic information and the paleo art and so forth to pretty up the database. The really big thing, the important thing, was to create a robust database that is navigable and functional and seemingly complete. And we really do have that. It's taken 2 years of a handful of data entry people, volunteers, but it really is a profoundly robust database already, just with a few tens of thousands of species in it. And we're shooting for, of course, to continue to build that, so that I don't want to do subspecies. A lot of people were asking me, how are you doing dogs, for example? The entire 400 registered species by the American Kennel Club are all classified as a single species in our database, and it's Canis lupus familiaris, and that's it. All of dogs, all the domestic dogs, are a subspecies of that, and so that's where it stops. We're not concerned about the end nodes. We're not concerned about subspecies, certainly. We're talking about the parent clades for these. And so we want to show almost entirely transitional species wherever possible. And there are hundreds and hundreds of them. So it's turning out very nice. I'm happy with it. I wish it was a little prettier for laymen to look at, people who don't know the meanings of the words, and that's part of the reason that I'm doing the video tutorial, to help walk people through that. But I do want to, draw the attention of artists and scientists and like that. And I want it to be a tool that is being used by teachers and students, and of course the scientific community themselves.
So my next question has to do with the artists. Being an artist myself, somebody like me would wonder, what sorts of things are you looking for? What are your methods for asking for different submissions? Are you asking for submissions?
Yeah, in any case, and if you look at any of the videos that you've seen in my series, I'll show up a handful of illustrations, and some of them are very simplistic. I'm looking for, as often as possible, realistic renderings of paleofauna. I mean, when we show a clade, for example, when we show the crown or origin of a clade, I want to show the oldest representative of that. The first example we know of the fossil record so far, like, for example. And very often we don't have adequate illustrations, so people don't know what they're looking at. They maybe get a picture of a fossil or something like that. And for the sake of people who are not professional paleontologists, I want them to be able to see what this organism looked like. And there's a lot of good paleo art out there. I just don't have the time to go search for it myself. I don't have time to work on this database much myself, unless I'm doing a video on it. And then of course I'm doing a lot of checking for confirmation and correction.
Is there any one that you're specifically looking for a picture for?
We're talking about tens of thousands.
Okay. Pick a grain of sand. Which one?
Yeah, I mean, if, for example, I mean, I can give, I just did some on fish, and I was showing different kinds of or different clades of fish from the Ordovician period, and I did find some nice artwork for the sake of my video. But what I need is for people to find good illustrations for each of these ancient species, and then when there's a place in the cladogram when you click on that species to see more information about it, I want to see the illustration, and I want to see the descriptions. And I don't have time to flesh all of that information out, because that's not the hard part. Constructing the cladogram accurately is the hard part, because there's a lot of research there. You can find cladograms online, and the problem is that some of them are changing because of additional data, because in any case, when you have something that you don't have a living example for anymore, then you neither have the embryology nor the genetics to confirm its location. All you have are the morphology. And so the appearance or discovery of a very well-preserved fossil can potentially change the way that it's currently classified. That's happened several times. So we've had to design this website so that any node or any clade can be moved and take all of its daughters with it, however necessary, because corrections have to be made. It has to be a self-correcting process. It has to be able to improve its accuracy. There was a previous attempt that was a very good one. It was a peer-reviewed, and this is what we want ours to be. We want ours to be peer-reviewed. There was one called the Arizona Tree of Life Arizona Tree of Life Project, also known as TollWeb, and they did a very nicely done cladogram that was peer-reviewed. But the thing was, it wasn't designed to be correctable, where you could just reconstruct the clade with new information. Ours is. So when, for example, the Arizona Tree of Life Project ran out of funding before they'd even completed the Human Genome Project, and there was a number of things that they discovered were actually misclassified, that they were classed entirely by morphology. And then when they run the genome confirms that no, this was morphologically attached to this group, but is it actually this group? Because it's just like running a paternity test. When you have the genome for it, that's the confirmation of where it really came from. And so the toll website wasn't designed so that they could make those corrections where they can decide, oh, Xenarthra really isn't here, or, aardvarks are actually over in our Afrotheria, so we need to move them. You couldn't do that the way that it was constructed. And ours, you can. And we have so many securities in place so that you can't come in and jack with it either. So you can't, people very often try to sabotage things for no good reason, but we have the part of the thing that took us so long in the development was the securities and how to block or undo damage. So that was a big issue for us.
But for the images you still need, have you thought about putting up a list somewhere on the internet where people can look at what you need and maybe submit pictures?
In order to add that sort of data, any data to add to the database, you have to have a login. So we have to have people that will sign in for us and give us your home address and everything, so we know you're a real person and all of that. And then we approve your login, and then you can make changes, and then whatever changes you make are logged to you. So we know that you're a real person, and we know that you're the one that really did this thing. You follow what I'm saying? So,
yes.
So we can't just have people submit without vetting of some kind, and then there needs to be a team effort, and there needs to be communication that these are the parameters we're following. How are we entering this data? We want some consistency, and this is the illustration that we're looking for. Like I said, when people put in an illustration of what is a chordate, for example, they might put in a picture of a dog, right? We can also put in a picture of a dog for vertebrate. You can put in a picture of dog for mammal, but I want the earliest example of that, because I want it to be unambiguous. So there are little rules that we have to put in so that it makes sense to people.
Right.
And so that people who are not already educated in this will be able to navigate their way around, and also actually learn what it is we're trying to teach them.
And many artists will not be already educated in this because, well, they're artists.
Paleo artists are already doing renderings according to scientific information. There's a number of paleo art websites where people do some really good work, and we want to be careful that we're not just talking about people that do things on DeviantArt and may or may not have any adherence to the actual fossil information. We want to make sure that everything that is submitted actually adheres to what the scientific information on these individual fossils is, what it really would have looked like.
And now I'm from Holland, so I could be asking a very stupid question here, but couldn't this be pitched to a university where students might make a project of this and then submit?
Yes, but again, we're thinking that since I'm supposed to have that link sometime this month, that when we send it to university, whatever, that's the way that we would do that. I wouldn't make a public announcement. I would and crash the server in a single day. But what I would do is once we have that link that we can share with people, I will be sending it to, as we said, the Dawkins Foundation, the Origins Project, and a number of other universities that might partake in it. I would like it to be something like, Cambridge or something like that. It doesn't really matter who, as long as there's somebody that's going to protect and preserve it.
Well, it's going to be a huge job.
I'm really excited about
for what I saw.
I'm tickled that it actually exists. If I can give you a little bit more background on it, when I made a video called "The 10th Foundational Falsehood of Creationism," and in that I created an animation of what would look like the old version of Internet Explorer, what is it, Windows Explorer, where you click on all the file folders to open up the folders to then go to subfolders and so forth. I designed this so that the taxonomic tree of life worked as those folders and looked the same way. And I got hundreds of requests for that program because people thought I was using an actual bit of software, that it wasn't just an illustration or animation. And after hundreds of requests, I say, this really is the thing that we need to have. And although it doesn't look like the way what we have designed doesn't look like Windows Explorer, because with the volume of information that we have, that honestly just wouldn't work. We have a very different format. It looks very different, but it is a tree, and you can navigate it, and you can click on anything you need to go in any different direction you like. But I petitioned for this for 6 years to find support to get people to do this. I talked to people that worked on the Arizona Tree of Life project. I talked to a number of different biologists and professors and so forth at different universities and so forth. And I finally got somebody that said, this is a good idea. Let me put some money behind that. And there we go.
I'm just astounded it took that long to find somebody who would be interested. Because this to me sounds like an astounding idea.
When they did the Arizona Tree of Life project, which, as I said, was an admirable effort, one of the problems that they had was that everybody on staff was a PhD scientist. And so they'd hired all these doctorates to effectively build a web page, which I understand you want the academic expertise, you want the biological background, but that should be just for placing things where they go, not for necessarily building the site. And so there was a great deal of money that was expended on that just to put it together. And as I said, they ran out of funding before they'd even completed the Human Genome Project. So that ran out of funding in like 2000. And yet it remains for 17 years now the best phylogenetic tree in existence, and it's 17 years out of date. And we know that it's rife with errors that can't be corrected because it's not being updated anymore, which is another reason that I'm ecstatic that this project actually exists, that it's not just a pipe dream anymore. I can go to it right now, and I can navigate through it.
I'm sure Answers in Genesis could help.
Yeah. Oh, wouldn't that be a fun conversation? Well, where are the kinds?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't surprise me that people held back on it, because it's a huge job. Just
whales are fish kind.
Not only the security, but getting everything in one website would be a huge task. So the fact that it's happening, I think, is because
I'm just happy that it's as I said, that it's real and it's already functional, that people can already navigate with it and see how these things are related, and the way that we can correct ours, where the Arizona Tree of Life project was not designed to be a living entity where you can constantly update and improve it. It's like the problem with science as opposed to religion is that science is an investigation of reality. And this is humans figuring out how reality works. And very often when we determine laws for what we think are regular observations or consistencies in nature, we've discovered that maybe there's a flaw in our theory, and so the laws that we've devised don't even work. And so it's our aptitude in making these observations, and so we constantly improve. Science changes because it's constantly improving. It's like a game of 20 questions. Every new question you ask will change your perspective, but it will make it more accurate than your perspective previously was. That's the way it works. Whereas religion is just throwing darts with a blindfold, and then drawing a bullseye around wherever it lands.
Yeah, but they already have everything figured out, so there's no new information needed.
And nothing verifiable, not a word of it.
Yeah.
And not only is nothing verifiable, but they post public statements to the effect that they will never admit when they're wrong. By any no data, there's no evidence they will ever accept.
If it contradicts scripture, then scripture automatically trumps the evidence.
Yes, that's on Ken Ham's website. And what makes
William Lane Craig also says the same thing. Whenever there's a conflict between science and scripture, then science got it wrong. It can't ever be the man-made book of fables written by ignorant primitives. They're the ones that can't be wrong. The guys who can prove that they're right are the ones that have to be wrong.
Yeah. And what makes me mad is that people like Ken Ham can get $118 million to build a boat in the middle of a field, whereas people in science have to ask for nickels and dimes to get their money together. That's
So imagine the Ken Ham thing, where we have scientific research, the way that people have to write grants, and the way that they have to be dispassionate in their presentations and their evaluations, and the peer review process, which also has to be dispassionate, cannot be sensationalized, and so it's very dry, and the public doesn't follow it very well at all. But religion does exactly the opposite. They sensationalize everything. They exaggerate everything. They make bold claims without any backing at all. And of course, you have emotionally minded people will invest $100 million to build a damn boat that never would have floated.
With sound boxes in it. I mean, that one room that you walk through, and it's just boxes with sounds coming out of it.
Yeah.
Is it
exactly.
you were there, Aaron? Is it really that empty? Because I recently watched Seth and Matt go through it. Matt wasn't happy at all. He was even mad that someone else paid for his ticket because he didn't want to give him money.
Yeah,
and
I felt bad about that too. I went through on the best day that you could go through. I walked through Noah's Ark the day after it opened, and I walked alongside Ken Ham and Bill Nye. Yeah,
I saw you. And you're still in the what they call the second debate, which isn't a debate, just a walkthrough.
It's Ken Ham trying to come up with excuses for how he can still believe. I mean, it doesn't matter that he doesn't have any evidence to show that he's right, as long as he can continue to ignore the evidence that proves that he's wrong.
Yeah, but is it really that empty as Matt and Seth described it? Is it?
Yeah, no, this Noah's Ark thing could have been made to look like it actually could have housed a whole bunch of animals. They could have made it look like that, but they didn't. They wanted to set it up for donors, essentially, so that, and they knew that a lot of these people were going to be elderly, and a lot of these people are going to be in electric wheelchairs, and so they built large ramps all through the thing to handle handicapped access and so forth. And so there's very little of the space that is devoted to anything looking like an animal. There's just a handful of cages. They wanted to say that there was going to be 1,400 original kinds, but what they did was they put up something like 40 species of stuffed animals in a cage. And they were originally going to do a live zoo in there, but then they realized that even with an air conditioning system built into this building, that's what it is. It's not a boat, it's a building. It's connected to 3 buildings in the back that all have stairways and everything. But even with an air conditioning system, if you were to house a zoo of any capacity in here, the smell would lead to methane poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine a Stone Age ark of this size, which
made
obviously would not, which is allowed by the Bible to have only one window?
Right.
And 8 people constantly rubbing shit shovels out of that one window, everybody would be dead in 2 or 3 days. There's no oxygen.
Well,
And
I mean, beyond that, the thing is made of wood on the inside. And I don't know how many of our listeners have ever grown up on a farm with animals in housing, but when, they showed that picture of, say, the donkey that's it's making revolutions around this huge ship-high toilet that looks like it must have been designed by NASA, because they totally had NASA in the Stone Age. But I mean, you have that donkey that's going around in circles on this wooden platform. What do donkeys do? They crap, they pee. What effect does excrement have on wood over time? I mean, this stuff isn't treated. This is just raw wood that has been used to build the interior of this ark. And, you know, even that one donkey is going to completely tear up the circle around where he's being led, not to mention all of the animals and all of the pens. And as you said, the methane poisoning.
Yeah, well, we got to add to that, because this wood is treated. It wouldn't have been treated if Noah was a real person doing this in the Stone Age, but the wood inside is all lacquered, and the wood outside is covered in what is it? The weatherproofing strips, the high, DuPont chemical Teflon kind of stuff that they do in buildings. And so there's nothing about this ark's construction that is done in the Stone Age fashion. But even with all of these provisions of lacquering and the waterproofing and stormproofing and everything that they've done to this building, it's still, after 1 year and a number of rainy days, it's already beginning to sag to show its wear. It's collapsing essentially on dry land after the single year that it was supposed to be afloat that whole time.
Oh, I'm dying.
I have to throw in another thing from the chat, Aron,
I'm sorry.
it's
Okay.
It's the same that I was thinking here. The moment we started talking about the ark, the parrot joined in, and so people in the chat are having fun on your parrot and ask if he's calling Noah at the moment. Because
I don't know, calling him Noah, that is not making any sense to me. I tried to bring him out. I was going to have him on the show, but sometimes he wants to come out, and sometimes you reach in there and he just tries to bite. So he was not he was not in a mood to come out today.
No, but he was on cue. The moment we started talking about the ark, he started making sounds in the background. So we had our ark sequence with full sound.
Well, as it happens, he's calling me now. So if you'll just talk amongst yourselves for about 1 minute, I'll see if he wants to come out.
Okay. Well, that's going to be me, because I think Charis has left the building. I'm not sure.
I'm back.
Oh, okay, you're back.
It was a forced intermission.
Oh, I thought so. So, yeah, it's still cool. It's also something I think we all have in common: the love for animals, and a lot of people in the chat will agree to that too. He didn't want to come out.
No, he just likes to call my name as if that's not going to do anything.
Well, we're a small channel. I think the parrot will reserve itself for a bigger audience, maybe. So that could be it.
I have a cockatiel.
Yeah, mine is a double yellow-headed Amazon.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, I quite like him, but they're very solitary. I mean, they have one owner, and so he'll be very nice and gentle with me most of the time, but he's hostile to anybody else.
I had the exact same bird. I never knew that. And mine was kind of a rescue, where he was abused because the man in that family abused his wife, and then the parrot copied his wife when they had visitors, and then the man had to silence the parrot. So he hated I don't know what bird it was, he or she hated men, and it took me quite a while to get to the point where I could actually interact with that one.
That's a heartbreaking story.
Yeah,
I had another parrot before this one. I had a son conure, and we named it Mango. But that bird, it didn't have a name before we got it. The people who had it had the bird for 5 years. They kept it alone in a back room in a cage. And when I came in, when I found they were getting rid of this bird for whatever reason, I don't even know what crossed their mind to get rid of the bird. They've had it for 5 years. They keep it in a room where no one goes. So the bird was alone for 5 years.
Yikes.
They would just come in and they'd change the water and the food and they would leave. They thought the bird was a decoration. So
Yeah.
I came in and the first thing I asked was, can we take it out of the cage? And the people were horrified. Nobody had ever given them the idea that you would take a bird out of a cage. Why the hell would you do that? You know, and of course that's what we did. I mean, we brought the bird home and we took it out of the cage, and he was out of the cage every day for hours at a time. And it was, I say he, it was actually, it turned out to be a she. Strange thing. I had this bird for a number of years myself. I mean, it lived in my house, I want to say 3, 4, or 5 years before it laid eggs.
I had a cockatiel that did that. His name was Otis. Laid an egg, became Lotus.
And so the bird was very, very feisty, very angry. It was difficult to get to bond with this bird because it had had no human interaction in its entire life. But after 5 years, I mean, I would take it out of the bird, I would take it out of the cage every day, and I'd be sitting there working on the computer. I would just sit it on my chest or whatever, and just let her just sit there, you know, and occasionally stroke her or something like that, and talk to her all the time. And it was 5 years, but she became a very affectionate, you know, and quite adorable bird.
Yeah, it takes a lot of patience, but then again, you get a lot out of it if it works. Yeah. I think. But that's for people who love animals, and that's another thing I hate, especially when I watch American Christians, because they have no respect at all for any animal.
Very often, yeah. I mean, I've gone into the house. I don't want to generalize that all Christians are this way, but I have met a couple of fundamentalists who are exactly this way. They one of my neighbors abandoned their house with a litter of kittens in the house, knowing that there's a litter of kittens in the house. They had the whole thing boarded up to be condemned. Wow. Why would you board up a mother cat and a litter of kittens in a house to have it condemned? How do you not have thoughts about this? Another one actually, this was the same house. There was a dog in the backyard chained to a pet carrier that had a bowl of water that was full of mosquitoes. This is the condition that we found it in. When they moved out, they left the animals chained up where they were. And yeah. I've met a number of people who've done things like that. You know, who would throw a bag of kittens in the water to drown them all, because they're just dumb animals, and therefore they don't have any feelings.
The reason I mentioned this because Ken Ham pretty much they now have this Answers News, and a friend of mine is doing a video series on that. I don't know if you've ever seen him, Apology. He does awesome work on.
That's a good show. I like the way that he's done that. That's fresh. That's different. I was delighted to have been on that show.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you were on it. Sure.
Yeah.
My bad. Now I lost my train of. Oh, he's following Answers News. So when he did, I started following Answers News, and pretty much every week, when it comes to abortion, Ken Ham will make the statement, get rid of spare cats, get rid of spare kids, as if getting rid of spare cats is acceptable and getting rid of spare kids isn't. I still think getting rid of spare cats is as horrible as the way he depicts abortion. Not the way it really actually is, but the way he depicts it. And so I get disgusted when things like that happen, and when it's also that in religion, brought up to take an argument from authority, and Ken Ham is an authority, and so
that guy was given an honorary doctorate. Can you imagine how offensive that is?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an autodidact. If somebody were to give me an honorary degree, I'd be ecstatic, you know, that somebody recognized the work that I've put into teaching myself. That would be a wonderful thing. But Ken Ham, to give him that would mean that it would have no value. If a university were to give that to me, that would have no value because somebody gave it to him, because he's dedicated his life to not teaching people, to unteaching people, to confusing and lying to people.
I haven't heard of this. Who gave it to him?
An honorary doctorate
Who
by, I
gave
don't
it
know,
to him?
Liberty University or some similar. You know,
Oh, okay, yeah,
it
that
wasn't.
figures.
I don't think it was Liberty. I think it was a different, you know, exclusively young Earth creationist Christian college that gave him this bogus degree.
Well, at least that softens the blow a little bit, because
And I
I
know
wouldn't.
people, of course, who have actual degrees, who think that any honorary degree cheapens the work that they put in to get the real one. And I agree with that. I certainly do. I'm just saying that if somebody were to bestow on me an honor like that, it would already be cheapened by some creationist college that already gave that to Ken Ham. So that would mean literally nothing anymore.
Well, I think you have to make the distinction whether it's coming from
a college,
a credible college,
I mean,
or a creationist college, because I would definitely make a difference between those. And I also disagree a little bit with you on giving an honorary doctorate. If and I'm just a layman, but if I look at the work that you do,
it
I
wouldn't have been
think
given. You've earned it.
the only thing to honor that is with an honorary degree, because it's you might be a layman in their eyes, but what you are putting together is pretty terrific, and that's something. There are even things that they can use. So I wouldn't say it cheapens their work. It's a compliment for someone who's maybe not have had the education they have and are not in the same position, but is doing incredible work.
Consider the source of the degree too. I mean, if somebody like Harvard was to bestow an honorary doctorate on someone like Ken Ham, then I think there would be a lot more reason for objection than for somebody who can barely be considered a college bestowing this on Ken Ham.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously it wasn't, you know, Harvard that did it. It was some flaky religious school anyway that's already had a.
Was it Pensacola Christian Academy or Pensacola Christian? Was it Pensacola?
Yes, it was a young Earth creationist school. So it's people that are already dedicated to lies, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but as I said, you do change lives if you put out. And just on cue, we have someone who's always watching when we go live, Beach Price, and she said, "I want to thank AronRa for telling me about miracles. He taught me, and he gave me a desire to learn more."
I'm reading that same post that she didn't say miracles. She's talking.
She didn't say. Oh, Myocytes. Sorry, I read it wrong. I read it wrong.
Imagine a procyanid. Imagine the common ancestor between dogs and cats. A thing that is not yet a dog, because it's arboreal and still has prehensile hands. We're talking about something that is a little bit more squirrel-like than a raccoon would be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what a myocyte is.
Okay. I have apologized in the chat. So yeah, but you do change lives. People are watching your stuff, and so you're at least making an impact. And I'm curious about one thing. You said you had a challenge and only one person ever responded to that, and that turned out to be Lilandra, and you're married now.
Yeah, no, that was I've made it a challenge for, I want to say, Since at least Y2K, I've been making the challenge that I can prove evolution to your satisfaction on the condition that it has to be an interactive experience. I have to ask you questions, get you to answer, so that you can't just deny whatever I tell you, because I know if I tell a believer anything, they'll just ignore whatever I say. They don't even have to understand what I'm saying. They've got two excuses. You know, that doesn't mean anything, and that's how God did it, and they can use those two excuses to get out of anything. But if I question them and I get them to provide the answers, then I can reason with them to get them to understand the process. And it takes a little bit of work. There's a few interactions, and I used to say something along the lines of, within a couple of dozen mutual exchanges in writing, then I can convince you that evolution is the truest, best explanation there is. I can prove it to your satisfaction. And the thing is that believers will not take that challenge. I think many of them already know that what they make believe is not what they literally believe. That they know that if they and I were to go back in time in a time machine, they know as well as I do what we would really see on the other end. They want to pretend something else. And so they will do everything they can to preserve that belief, including closing their eyes and plugging their ears, because they know that what they believe is not the truth. But there are sincere believers. There are people who believe what they do, not for dishonest reasons. And that's why I said earlier, I'll give you all the patience you need. If you are where you are for sincere reasons, I will reason with you and I will help you out of that. But what I've discovered with creationists is that it is possible to be an honest creationist only until you get into an argument with somebody like me. Somebody who knows both the religion and the science. Because very quickly you're going to have to make a choice, whether to remain honest or whether to remain creationist. Because very early on in our conversation, you will realize that it is no longer possible to be both. And I've seen people come to that crossroads and choose the other direction, who will actually sometimes even admit to me that they're going to believe what they want to believe, regardless what the truth is.
Yes, I've met one so far.
I would have qualified as another because of the literal fear of a literal hell, a very intense one. And
I just have a question about that. If you could explain that to me, because in a few days I'm going to be in Raleigh, and we're going to be talking about the reasons that people want to believe. And I've inquired of a whole bunch of people why they believe the way they do. And one of the most curious answers is, I have to believe that there's a God because I'll go to hell if I don't. Well, doesn't that mean that you already, but that's not the reason you believe. That's what you believe, not the reason you believe it. So can you help me understand that?
The reason that they have to believe is also a belief. I mean, you can have a belief, and the reason you have to believe it can be part of that belief, if that makes any sense. Like, I have this belief about Jesus Christ rising from the dead, and my reason for the necessity for believing that is also part of the belief. It's another belief. That reason is another belief that ties into that. Which part did you want me to understand? Because I've totally lost my train of thought. Or did you want me to explain?
However, whatever answer you felt appropriate to that question is fine with me. I mean, it's just when I ask people that and they say that, well, I have to believe that or else I'll go to hell, that's an admission that you already believe that because you already believe there's a hell. That doesn't answer to me why you believe there's a hell. But in your description, you said that the belief and the reason and the reason for the belief are conditioned to be the same thing. And I may not understand that from a personal perspective because I can't imagine thinking that way. But that's my fault, not yours.
It's not your fault.
It's my inability, and I've been accused of this before, and I think accurately so, that I lack the ability to put myself in someone else's shoes.
For your sake, I'm glad in this particular case, because a fear of a literal hell is a very scary place to be. For those who are in a more fundamentalist circle of believers, most of those do believe in a physical burning hell where you are tossed with a new body. You die and then you're given a new body, a physical body, and you are thrown into a lake of fire where you will not be burned up, but you will always be burned. And one common kind of word picture that has been taught by people like, say, Kirk Cameron, Ray Comfort, they give the example. Imagine being burned just on your fingertip, a pretty big nerve center. You're burned there and it keeps you up all night because of how horrible one little burn is. And I now imagine that all over your entire body, all the time, for all eternity, without ever being able to sleep. And for those people who believe that the Bible is the Word of God, the truth that is sent to us by the creator of the universe, who are we to, one, question that, two, rebel against that, and, to go against that and risk being thrown into a hell that is manufactured by this huge being with the capacity for eternal love and eternal vengeance. I mean, that sort of, to be put in that sort of thing, that's psychological abuse for sure, but it's very real to the person.
And I understand that you're coming from a very different perspective on this, and that you've also managed to walk your way into this. So I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. But from my perspective, the idea of just how over the top that is, that if you believe what we tell you, if you believe the lies that I'm giving you, then I'm going to promise you an impossible reward that I won't ever actually have to pay, because you'll be dead before you know that it doesn't exist. And I'm going to threaten you with a fate worse than death if you don't believe me. I mean, we know logically that any being that really exists would not require such a thing. It wouldn't care if you worship it. I mean, no being worthy of worship wants to be worshipped, and nothing would judge you. No justifiable being would punish you for not believing in it.
We know that, and I now know that. But at the time, I didn't know that. I hadn't been raised with that. That it's not necessarily all that they're trying to be dishonest. Many of them want to believe, but honestly feel they can't, and that they're being actively deceived by the enemy or tried by God for their faith, having their faith tried. And so the harder they fight, the more honorable they are. And in their mind, for many of them, not all of them, but for many of them, they are honestly fighting against the lies of the enemy. And for, like you've had people admit to you, I don't know why I'm gesturing, you can't see me, but for many people who have admitted to you, yes, many times you do convince them that the facts appear correct. But then there's the argument, well, God created light to have already reached Earth at creation. So this whole, I think you're being beckoned.
Yeah, that's the bird again.
Oh.
I've gone to him twice to bring him out, and he hasn't come out either time. So that's, if he wants to keep calling my name and then ignoring me when I show up, that's his fault.
But, the arguments will be, our own perception is lacking. We're not quite correctly understanding the evidence that's in front of us. God created, light to have already reached Earth. So this idea of planets being millions and millions of light years away, and us basically looking back in time when we're seeing them, that's all false to them. It's either a deception by God or something else, but they cannot allow them to, in their minds, be deceived by us, the tools of Satan, the father of all lies. It's a very real war.
The Bible contradicts itself and says that God cannot lie, and then also says that God lied.
I know. And that was something that I had, to use more Christian lingo, struggled with.
And so
I don't know what my rationale was at the time, even. All I had to do was take it on faith, and if I started to doubt God and see a contradiction in Scripture, it wasn't because God was wrong because he's perfect. It was because there is a gap in my understanding, and that's to be expected because his ways are so much higher than my ways. My little pea brain cannot understand the things of God. So this seeming contradiction is only a result of my lesser thinking.
Okay.
And that's what you're dealing with. It is really, it's a tough thing to try to get through, because the depth of, you know, I know it's harsh for a Christian to hear me say the depth of the deception, but the depth of the deception is pretty spectacular. And, you know, the truth really did set me free.
And as it does, I mean, I agree with that. However, there's another added statement that the truth will set you free, but very often at first pisses you off.
Well, at first it left me with no identity. My entire identity was caught up in Christianity and being a Christian. In my husband, who's the one who's now my ex-husband, my identity was the wife of X.
Wow.
Not Charis. It like I completely had to figure out who and what I was. So the truth in the long run has set me free, but initially it was traumatic. And there can be a lot of fear, not only of hell, but of that same loss of one's identity, especially if they've invested much of their life into this. You know, you could be talking to people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and that's all they've known their whole life. And to come face to face with the possibility that their entire life, their whole identity, their whole way of thinking for 70 years of them is just, they've been living for nothing. That, you know, even that, you know, you're up against a lot. It's not just.
I have family members who are wholly invested in their identity is that they believe, you know, in this particular religion, and there's no independent thought. There's no possibility of reasoning with these people. There's no reason there. There's no
Well, as far
logic
as
there.
right, independent thought, you're commanded to take every thought captive to the will of Christ. That's part of it. Like, you can't even, no, your thoughts can't be independent. They have to be taken captive and subject to the will of Christ.
That may be the biggest advantage that I have over a lot of other people, in that I never integrated it with my identity. I mean, I was raised in a Mormon family predominantly, and I never identified as Mormon because logically I thought, now we're talking about as a little boy, you know, somewhere between 8 and 10 years old, something like that. I never identified as Mormon because I didn't know what were all the beliefs that were required to be a Mormon. So how would I know if I meet all the criteria? And I don't know anything about other religions that I knew to exist. So how do I know that some other religion wouldn't closer align or make more sense to me than the one I'm raised in? So, I mean, this is something that I would have thought logically, absolutely every person on earth should have realized at the onset, that you don't know what religion you are until you've looked at all of them. Now, you know that Christians will very often tell you that you have to know everything before you can know that, you know, whether one thing that they hold true is true or not. You know, you have to have all knowledge first. You know, this
It's a common double standard.
Yeah, exactly. Yet they will declare themselves Episcopalian or Southern Baptist because they're born into that family. And, you know, it's even worse here in Texas. We were talking about politics earlier, and a disturbing thing here in Texas is that people are born into the Republican Party. How the hell does that make any sense? That you have to vote for the party you were born into. It has nothing to do with policies. It has nothing to do with what the candidate wants to do versus what the other candidate wants to do. It's the party you were born into. That's identity politics, right?
So you turn 18 and you're automatically registered to the Republican Party if your parents were also Republican?
No, you would you would be obliged to register Republican, because I mean, what choice do you have? You know, it's not like you would consider that, hey, maybe the other candidate in this case is a better candidate than the Republicans offer. No, that doesn't happen. And I've been to a number of political rallies. I was at one where there were a handful of politicians or there was a handful of activists who were saying that the Republican Senate here in Texas was doing so much damage to education that these Republican voters would have to be prepared to vote for a non-Republican candidate in order to undo the damage their own party was doing. And this was an obscene thing for many of them to accept, because they were born Republicans. They have to, but nobody's born Republican. Nobody's born Mormon. Look at the damn policies. Do you really believe this or that? And for what reason do you believe that? Because maybe you're wrong. And I'm alarmed that I, as a 6 or 7 or 8 year old kid, and I am able to figure that out, and virtually nobody else does. I mean, because what other child ever said that they didn't identify with whatever religion their family was because they don't know if they meet all the criteria? Whoever does that? I think, know honestly, I'm the only case that I've ever heard of that's been.
No, there's another one. A friend of mine as well. He was raised Catholic, and at pretty much the same age started thinking. So there's one.
Glad to hear it.
Well, he's been my mentor on Twitter when I started. So another person I hugely admire. So I could be a little bit biased, but that's his story as well.
Bring up something, since you mentioned, you know, admiring somebody, and you also brought up bias. That's another thing, since it's kind of in context with what we're talking about here. There are people I admire that I do not agree with about everything. There are people that I have significant disagreements with, yet I admire them for other things. It's possible to do that. And I'm just, I see an environment right now in the United States where, and in not just the United States, but we see it a lot in Europe as well, that people are going into this false dichotomous kind of thinking where you might agree with this person about 90% of the things, but then when you find the one thing the one thing you disagree on, well, then suddenly you have to hate every aspect of that person.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't imagine that. There are people that I have a great deal of respect for on this, and this, and we disagree completely on this other thing. But that doesn't change the fact that on these topics where we do agree, that person is still an ally. And that person can still work with me to achieve mutual goals. And we can argue about this other thing later, but let's take care of business on the things we agree on first.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is a really good example of this. I think about 1.5 years ago, this happened on Twitter. I forgot what the surrounding issue was that everybody was talking about, but he made the comment, if sex was really that unpleasurable, we as a species, I think, would be extinct. And he got a lot of responses, some of them involving, you know, how painful sex is with cats, different bugs that eat each other alive afterwards.
I'm sorry.
And I mean,
when somebody tells you how uncomfortable sex with cats is, it reminds me of a line from Jardine Garofalo where she says, "It's okay to love your pet, just don't love."
But I mean, as an astrophysicist, everybody still greatly admires him. But then he went into this, and he it was pretty funny. I'd have to find it in his Twitter feed again, but
I have
that was funny.
Huge respect for Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I told him face to face that there's a lot of people in the atheist movement that would really appreciate if he wouldn't just diss us all, and if he would just admit that he is an unbeliever the same as we are. But he doesn't want to wear that label, and he doesn't because there are people in the atheist movement on YouTube in particular that he doesn't want to be associated with. He doesn't want to be put in that same category. And I can easily understand that, because where once upon a time, a few years ago, some of us might have been able to pretend that we were, you know, sophisticated intellectuals or whatever. You know, anybody on social media knows better than that now. You know, I mean, so I can understand why he wouldn't want to be, you know, associated
couldn't
with.
someone
Sorry.
make him aware that Ken Ham is on YouTube as well? I mean, if that's the reason,
it really doesn't. You know, the whether Neil deGrasse Tyson, whether Neil deGrasse Tyson accepts the A word label or not, really doesn't make a difference compared to the fact that he's still doing the work I want him to do, to raise awareness. You know, and so I'm not going to criticize or demean the effort or the impact that he has for such a trivial reason.
Yeah, well, I think I can relate to that, because and that's I didn't have the chance to throw that in. A while ago, I had someone I just picked from Twitter to have a conversation with on YouTube, and that particular someone was Charis. So we did, I think, 2 hours on YouTube about her transition from being a fundamentalist to becoming an atheist. Since that moment, I wanted her to come on as my co-host, and what I've learned from Charis is, to me, is huge, because I grew up atheist. I grew up in Holland, in a predominantly atheist country, so I don't have any clue about how a fundamentalist ticks, for lack of better words. And Charis has taught me so much, and not only about the way of thinking, but also the way of approaching. And I changed, I think, my method a lot through what I've learned from Charis. So should you ever have questions in that regard, I can recommend Charis as a good source and as a good teacher.
You really did that?
Yeah, yeah. Because it's the truth. A lot of people
don't change your methods too much, though, because I'm way too easily bullied. You know, keep some of your aggression for your own sake.
Well, I do, but my approach has changed, and because now I've learned how to approach better. And if I want to change someone's thinking, I need to know how to do it.
Yeah,
where are you?
Their barriers.
Where are you in the Netherlands, by the way?
Where I am,
yeah.
I'm in the middle of nowhere, near the German border.
Okay.
In a tiny cabin, I think yards away from the border.
Ah, okay. I was in Utrecht a couple years back, and I was surprised to find out that there was a huge atheist convention 5 hours drive away over the German border, and I was embarrassed that I didn't even know about it. And when I looked at the roster of speakers and everything, I knew everybody. And it's like, it was very frustrating, because I know all these people. My friends are all over there, and I didn't even know this was going on.
Where was that?
Huh?
Where was that in Germany?
I don't know. It was a couple of years ago, and I want to say Hamburg, but I don't think that's right. I don't know. I don't remember. No, it couldn't have been Hamburg. It was 5 hours from Utrecht, is what I was told. And there were people that had driven down from Germany to see me in Utrecht, which I thought was funny, because there's obviously a bigger, better convention going on somewhere else. But
depends on who you want to see and who you want to hear. So
yeah, I'm hoping. I wanted to go. I had actually planned a trip for months. I was planning for almost a year that I would have been in the United Kingdom, and it was going to be in Iceland, London, and Copenhagen in this last year, all on the same trip. And with a month away from it, we ended up having to cancel. And I was very frustrated about that, because I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. I'm hoping to make up for it and come. I want to be in the UK and also the Netherlands again in 2018, and just trying to coordinate it. I'm supposed to be in Reykjavik, I forget, I think September, just before QED, I think it is. I'm supposed to be in Reykjavik. And so if I could, it would be cheap and easy to jump over from Reykjavik to QED. So I'm hoping that that ends up working out.
Okay. I have to bring this up because it's a picture that I throw out on Twitter a lot, and that's the picture that you tweeted once on your way to hell. in front of the signs.
Yep.
If you ever get there again, look it up on Wikipedia. There's a picture of it on Wikipedia. It's at the train station there. There's a goods department.
I've been there.
Translates
I got a picture in front of that as well.
The Gods Expedition?
Yep, I did.
Please share that on Twitter.
Yeah, I'll look it up. I've got it on my Facebook right now, but yeah, I did. I went and posed in front of that building. I loved the hotel there. Oh my God, I'm trying to remember the name of the hotel. My gosh, was that nice. We go into this hotel, and it's with this beautiful little blonde, receptionist, whatever, hands me the keys to my room with his delightful smile and says, "Welcome to hell." The perfect welcome, right? And it was a wonderful hotel, great breakfast buffet and everything. That their pool is on the 7th floor. It's on the top floor of the building, and just I wish I could remember the name of this place, but it was one of our best evenings in Europe. Actually, was the time we spent in this hotel.
Well, I'll keep a close eye on.
Going to hell was awesome.
Yeah. Well, we have something near where I live, which would be one of your favorites. Sorry?
Scandic Hell. That was the name of the hotel. Was Scandic Hell. Okay.
If you make it to Holland, we still have close to where I live a very religious village. That's called Rectum.
Okay.
I don't know if you get the joke a little.
It's called what?
Rectum.
I thought that's what he said.
That's great.
Yep, so it's literally going to the asshole of the world.
Yes.
Yeah, we have another hell here in the United States, which is a lot more hellish. And you have to drive through it to get to Detroit, which itself is also hell. Or hellish. Anyway, I'll keep it. I apologize that I'm going to have to drop out. It's been like an hour and almost 2 hours now, and I do have something I need to jump on.
Yeah, almost 2 hours. Okay, there's one question I wanted to ask, because I think that is important. If you get elected, what can you actually do?
The thing that I'm most looking forward to is we have so many things that are just crazy that I've had to give testimony before the House, for example, to point out what I think is glaringly obvious that other people don't even notice. About what the ramifications of certain bills are. How do you not see the extrapolations of what will happen? If you authorize this, that means this other thing will happen as a result. How can you not see that? But very often people do not see that. And so I'm looking, and I don't want to boast or anything about being intelligent, but I mean, think about it. If we're talking about American politics, the bar is pretty damn low. As for what it takes to be an intelligent politician. Am I right?
Well, that's a relief. Everybody start running now.
Yes, individual people need to be running. I mean, the reason that I'm running is because, Bernie Sanders said that, that a lot of people that had never been in politics needed to be running, because the people who are in politics are very often, unscrupulous people. They're not brilliant people. They're not running for office because they're smart enough to be leaders. They're running for office because they can scam people out of money. And that's the reason a lot of these people are doing this. And they're being motivated by their churches and for other corrupt reasons. And so people who actually care about the benefit or the welfare of their country, and I don't mean just welfare, I mean the the advantages to being an American, you know, what little there may have been, can only exist if people who believe in those are going to pursue and protect them. Our president, our current president and vice president, have both been working against everything that made America great. And specifically, Trump has been attacking the First Amendment, not defending the Constitution as he swore to do, but he's actually been advocating against every provision of the First Amendment since he got elected. And so people who believe in what these things were constructed for, people who actually have a sense and an understanding for what the value was of being an American, need to be running for politics in this country. Because the people who are currently in power clearly do not have any concern about American people, certainly not in Puerto Rico. If you're not a valid state, then screw you. That's pretty much the attitude it seems to be. And nobody has any damn forethought. So I just want to do the best that I can, but being a reasonable person and understanding these bills and understanding what the extensions are, being able to extrapolate from insufficient data, where a lot of these other people can't seem to draw a picture, drawing the lines between the numbers.
No. Okay. Well, we'll close it off here. I want to thank you for coming on, for at least being a good sport. Now the other thing didn't happen. I hope we can contact you if Pastor Locke decides to come up with a new date, because I still want to see that happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for coming on, and I'll follow you, and I'll keep a close eye out on the schedule for when you're coming to Holland, because I definitely want to meet in person someday.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much
Okay.
for coming on. We hope to have you again sometime in the not too distant future.
All right. Thank you much.
Okay. Thanks everybody in the chat, and I just muted the wrong person because the chat went up, but we're closing off anyway, so no reason to do that for the one that I was targeting. Thanks everybody, and see you all again for the next broadcast. Bye-bye.
Bye.